And we're back. Alright, everything should be good now, hopefully. Everything should be good now. No more stutters. We're back on good Wi-Fi, hopefully. Just gonna do a little bit more cleaning up on the... just to make sure we're getting full contact where I want it. So this is silicone, not like silicone grease. That they put around to hold the AHS on. More or less to keep anything out too. It's pretty flat. I don't put any metal on these at all. No metal whatsoever. So I need a sheet here. Hopefully everything looks good. Hopefully everything looks good. Alright. So, to show the die, the lapped i7 3770K. And then I'll just show the back side of it. Doesn't really matter, it's just if it'll focus it. You can see the SMD that I replaced, but so hopefully you can see the lapped part of it. Then the lapped IHS, both sides, not just one side, both sides. Both sides have been done. Again, just using 220 or even 400 grit sandpaper is okay. 220 is to start off with, more or less, for it, to help get rid of most of that nickel plating. And you'll find on the bigger IHSs that they're really bad. These smaller ones aren't too bad. More or less, we're trying to decrease the height, so that way the thermal transfer can be better to the water cooler. Same thing with the backside, has been lapped lightly. Just lightly. But the front side's well lapped, trying to decrease the actual height of the copper to the actual CPU die. That way the thermal transfer from the CPU die can be a lot quicker, like a quicker wick away. That will help with your stability on overclocking. Just gonna be using my thermal paste for the die and the IHS. So what I'm gonna do is get this board set up here. I got a hair on one of the pins. So another person was asking what I use to replace a broken pin or fix broken pins. It's just a really nice needle nose type tweezers, more or less for soldering in that. But you can, if the pin's been broken off or too mangled to where you can't fix it, because if you try to fix it, it might break, you can break that pin at a certain spot, flip it, and then push that end back into the same slot. Grab a pin from another board, like a spare board. It's got to be around the same like pin, right? Then you can take that pin, you can pull that pin out, like pull it out as far as you can, and then snap it off from the main board, like the actual board that you're going to be taking it off of. And then you can just slide it into the actual board that you're repairing, and you can finesse it into a spot and then finesse it to line up with all the other ones, and that will work. You can use like conductive type pastes that you can put onto it and then put it in just for clarification, you're getting good signal, but more or less you're just going to snap off the really messed up pin or already broken pin from somebody else, and then just fold it back into the same slot it's going in, grab a new pin and just slide it in. You can use these. These work great. What I'm going to do, I'm just trying to pull out a cat here. Gotta make sure all the pins contact nicely, so make sure everything looks good. Make sure everything looks clean before you assemble. So just gotta clean everything up for assembling this. Don't want any kind of dirt, grease, or anything on this. I've already cleaned this off with a an actual isopropyl or whatever they use for those wipes for these. You can get them in the kits as well, like DeBauer kits and that. They come with a bunch of them and a whole bunch of thermal paste applicators as well. Same thing with the top IHS and the bottom IHS. No greases and that. You gotta make sure everything's clean as it can be. So what I'm gonna do, and then they're keyed. So the bottom part, you can see here it has that flat spot right here. Like bumps out. Make sure it lines up the same way as you normally have it. When delidding these, though, you gotta watch out for the thermal, or not thermal, the silicone that's around it to hold the IHS on. So, as you can see, there's actually some of that still inside of it. Not a big deal. It's not gonna do anything. But all of this here, you want to clean off, and I use a plastic razor. I prefer to use a plastic razor on it. Just guarantees you can put pressure on it, clean it up real nice. There might be some residue left over. It's up to you if you want to clean it up, but just make sure you clean that up as nice as possible, because when you put the IHS back onto this, it's literally going to be touching the die. So what you're going to have to do is lap the outside, which is higher, it's raised. So this is a recessed spot right here. So you're going to want to flatten all around that. And as you can see, there's a little bit of copper showing on the sides, and that shows that it was flattened out quite a bit. Because the pressure from either the air cooler, water cooler, whatever you're going to be using for it, is going to put a lot of mounting pressure onto it. So you don't want too much pressure on the die, but you want pressure on it, of course. You don't want too much. There's a lot of fine tuning that. More or less, when I do it, I gotta put thermal paste on. I already know, I've already done this one, so I'll put thermal paste in the center of the die. That's it. Just put a little bit of thermal paste in the center of the die, and I'll put the heat spreader on. You can push it down so that way it holds itself, and you can put it back into the CPU socket. You can close everything down, tighten it. You just wait a little bit, it'll squeeze out all the thermal paste. When you take it off, what you're gonna want to do is use a plastic scraper. And again, I really like plastic razors because they're really thin and they are sharp still, but they're not going to damage anything really. So you're gonna want to pop that off. You don't want to slide it around and all that. You want to just pop this off so that way it falls off. That way you can check the CPU die. So when you take it off, you want to see very little thermal paste on that. I mean, very little. There might be some bare spots in that, but you just want to see some very little thermal paste on it when you take it off. That will let you know that the IHS, the integrated heat spreader, is touching the die, but it's not going to put too much pressure on it. The pressure where you want it is around the recessed spot, so this height. You want it around the die more, or you want it to be right on the die and right on the CPU housing, more or less. So that way, when the pressure goes down on the IHS, all the pins on the board will contact. That's the main thing you want. Sometimes, if I have it, so this one here, This is a back plate that I'll be using. So this is a back plate that I'll be using. I do have multiple of these. They just come in kits and you can buy them if you want. But the standoffs on them, if you have a shorter standoff, you can get more mounting pressure. This one here, you can only put so much pressure. So you can't, with some of these back plates, you can't get a good contact onto a lapped. It's a normal CPU would be just fine with this plate. But with a lapped one, because I lapped the die, I lapped the IHS, lapped the outside of the die contact, and the disconnected. Are we here? I haven't had that before. Oh, we're good. We should be good. We're reconnected. It says we're reconnected. Alright, should be good. But yeah, these standoffs, as you can see, the height of the standoff. If it focus, there we go, focus. The standoff height will help for people that just really are not sure how much pressure to put onto it. Or even if you made it so the IHS, the backside that's touching the CPU die, if you lapped it and then lapped the outside and it's too much, it's touching the die only and not the actual outside of the CPU die, then it will make it so you don't break the CPU, which is really good. It's really good. So I will be using this one, but I might have to modify my cooler a little bit, as in there's spacers, washer spacers on the actual cooler that I can take off so I can put more mounting pressure, which is kind of nice. So I'll put this on now. And those just go through, and they protrude quite a bit. When you can get other ones that don't protrude so much, you can get a lot more mounting pressure on it. It's not a huge CPU, so you don't need a whole lot of mounting pressure, but it's fine. Alright, so I think I'm going to make sure this is clean. I swear I had one. Had a rag. So again, because I was poking the CPU die and I've been touching the actual IHS on both sides, you want to make sure there's no grease. You may have very clean hands. It doesn't matter. You have grease on your hands, so you just expel grease. So clean it all off. Grease doesn't like hot temperatures, and these CPUs, they're not the highest TDP, but they're quite warm. So clean it all off. Make sure it looks good. Same thing with the other side. There we go. So what I like to do with the CPU die here, and what we can do is go meow, brown. Alright, hopefully that looks okay for you. So this is the CPU die. Looks pretty good. As you can see, there is a slight amount, a little bit of a silicone on it, but that's fine. That's not like silicone thermal paste or anything like that. It's the silicone that holds IHS on. You can see that there's a little bit on it. That's fine. I've checked it over. You can't even feel it, so that's good enough for me on this. You can use like isopropyl and other things on it to clean it, but I don't like putting isopropyl on my CPUs or memory chips or anything like that. So what I'm gonna do is show you what I do for testing the actual height to make sure the contact's good. You're just going to use a little bit of thermal paste, not a whole lot. So here, again, with a rag, make sure it's very clean, no grease, no nothing. Don't be touching the top, don't be touching the bottom. Always hold it from the sides on everything now, since it's delidded. And we're just going to use a little bit. See, not much. Not even that much. I'm going to take like half of that off. So we'll do that. Put a lid back on, because I have a cat, and I don't want cat hair in my thermal grease. So we'll show that. See, so not much. It's just a blob in the center basically. And I didn't add any on the back side of this, because we don't need to. We're just testing for how well this fits. So again, what I like to do, just line it up where it was lined up before. And since I've been messing around with it, put it upside down. There we go. Line it up. Now you'll see that it's not touching it like around the sides or anything, so thermal paste is holding it up. If you have a warmer temperature, as in just a warmer climate, and if you can just keep pressure there, warm it up even with your hands, it will help spread the CPU. And I'm not putting much pressure, like, I wish I can, wish I had my little weight that I can put on it and show you don't need a whole lot of weight. You just constantly put pressure on it though. Then you'll notice all the sides are starting to hit. Don't be moving it around, especially if you're using a certain kind of thermal paste, like this one here. I make this thermal paste. It has diamond grit, so like it's not expensive. 70,000, 75, or 80,000 grit works really good. From research and other people have done a lot of research into it as well. 70 to 80,000 grit diamond works really good. You can buy it by the little baggies, and the little baggies will last you a long time. And I think a little baggie of it, like close to 100 grams, will only cost you like 20 bucks maybe. And it'll go through a lot. That's a lot. Like, I'll make you a lot of thermal paste. You just add in, and you're gonna have to test how much. So like, you can buy this right here. You can buy these 20 gram. I think these are 20 gram containers. You can buy these 20 gram containers for about $10, and then you can make it better by just adding in diamond paste or diamond grit, which is like 70 to 80,000 grit. Diamond paste is usually about 70 to 80,000 grits, so that's why I say that will work too. Again, we're just going to do that, and you don't want to move it around if you're using diamond grit, because you'll scratch up the die. Like, you can end up making it worse than what it was, basically. Now you'll see that everything's set onto it, not going anywhere. We're going to put... We gotta zoom out. So what we're gonna do here, because we're not done with the actual making sure everything's fitting nice. Yes, we put pressure in the center of it. The center of it though is just to make everything stick. It makes everything easier to put back into a motherboard. So what I'll do is I'll put this in here. Ba-bam. We'll have to back that up a bit. And then we're going to close it. Not hard to do. And we can just set that off aside, let that sit. Now the pressure for this is around the outside. So we have... we have this. So right here Over there is where it pushes down on those two tabs to make sure you have some mounting pressure before you even start. More or less just hold everything in place nicely. The more pressure is going to be from either the water block or the air cooler that you're going to put onto it. But yeah, that's that. And then you just let it sit for a little bit. You don't have to do a whole lot. Just let it sit for a little bit. I already know I've already done. But you're going to have to go back and forth. You're going to have to fine tune it more or less. And you can't lap the CPU. You can't lap the CPU past the actual plate. You got to make sure that if you do it, you don't lap this too much, or else you won't be able to get contact on your cooler. And now I've been touching the CPU or the IHS again. I have to clean it because I got grease all over it. May not look it, but guaranteed there is. So that's good there. That's probably long enough for me on that, and then I will just take it apart. So we just do this, boom, boom. Take it out like your normal CPU. The thermal paste should be holding it together quite nicely. Normally with a motherboard, I don't have any other CPUs for this board, so I can't put one in, but if you have a spare CPU, put it in here. Just protects the pins, keeps any dust out too. I'm just gonna put the back plate back on it because I don't have the 3M. The 3M stickiness is no longer good on it. So we'll take a look at this now. Now, I'm going to see if I could zoom it a little bit more. Oops. There we go. Okay, here we go. Again, just get underneath the IHS just nicely. Try not to move it too much. You're just trying to pop it up. So that way we can see the spread. Now, again, I only used a very, very little amount of thermal paste. But as you can see, very little thermal paste on it. And you check the back side of the IHS that's touching the die. And it's the same thing, so it looks really good. So I'm really happy with that. That's what you want. You want to make sure everything is very little thermal paste on it after you take it off. Just make sure you know how flat everything is. Then when you want to put this back going, we can just add more thermal paste. Just add more thermal paste to make sure everything looks good. And then when it spreads out from the pressure onto it, it'll fill up all around it too. So if you're gonna be doing this, don't be shy with the like your prep work with this. Don't be shy with any kind of thermal paste, as any spread out onto it will help spread some of the heat to more of the IHS as well, and that'll help like your thermal wicking, like instant heat. So as soon as you go into a load, it's not gonna spike to extreme temperature or spike too fast. So I'm gonna show this how much I put on. Don't be shy with it. Doesn't matter what thermal paste you're using. Don't be shy with it if you're doing this. If you're gonna do liquid metal, you have to do it the liquid metal way, as in very little. But you're gonna have to do the same kind of technique. You're gonna have to check to make sure everything is seating nicely and the liquid metal is actually going to work. If not, you can have a really bad hot spot, and let's say you put some load onto it, and that hot spot goes crazy high temperature, you can burn out cores, and you don't want to burn out cores on your CPU. Like that's the main thing of doing it like this, is to make it better, not worse. So take your time before you put it back into the system by testing it over and over to make sure the contact between the CPU die to the backside of the IHS is as flat as you can get it, and make sure the actual outside, so the raised spot, is actually going to contact the where it was contacting before, because it will just make a better mounting pressure overall, and you won't crack your die, because if you have the back plate, the backside of the IHS to the die, and it's only touching the die, and you put pressure from your water cooler or something on it, it will crack the die because it's just putting pressure in the center. And let's just say something that's almost like glass, it's not going to bend. It's not going to bend very well, or it's not just going to bend, it's just going to break. It's just going to crack, and it's no good. So there's that. Put this back on before I get some kitty hairs in it. We're just going to put this back on. Again, same way as I did it before with this. I will just put it down, make sure it's lined up onto the silicone. If you have any silicone around that you can see, just line it back up to that. If not, just line it center, so center of the whole die, and you should be good. And then we just put pressure here. Put pressure until, I don't know, not much. Like, I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure on it. I'm just going to keep constant pressure. The temperature from my finger's going to go to the copper and that, and then it'll hit the thermal paste, which will make it so it's like a little bit more viscous, or less viscous, I should say. And then that'll help a lot. It'll help spread it out, make sure that there's no big spots before you put it on your motherboard. Plus, if you get all air bubbles out, it won't move anywhere. You don't have to worry about it going anywhere. So that's that. And as you can see from the center of my finger there, doesn't matter how clean your fingers are, you're gonna have a little bit of grease. You sweat grease, so we'll have to clean that again. So I'll put this back into the motherboard. I'll clean this up really nice, and we'll see how everything's looking. Now, if you're doing this with this here, you'll notice that these tabs, press on those tabs. When you slide this back down, it will move this whole thing forward to lock it into place here. So if you can set this back a little bit, not much, just like maybe a millimeter or so, you just set it back, so that way when you tighten in your tensioning bracket down, this will actually just slide into the normal location that it should be in. And that's all you need to do, just to make sure that the center of the die is at the center of that. So, as you can see though, there's still that little dot. What we'll do, make sure we clean everything up as nicely as possible. For the IHS, you don't want to put too much grit. Higher grit is not normally going to be better. 400 grit is usually the max you want to do. Not to polish. You don't want to polish the die, because it will make the silicone grease, the silicone that's in your thermal paste or whatever, it will slip. It'll slip and it'll make a really bad spot. And if you're gonna do really cold temperatures, it'll crack or it's not good. So don't polish. Just make it so if you run your nail over it, it's smooth, and no ridges, but also make sure it's not polished. So you might be able to see some very, very faint lines in it, but that's fine. You don't want to polish. Not unless you're going to do a matched. So what you can do is buy like a lapping plate or something, a proper lapping plate. And what you can do is you can match the actual CPU, the IHS. You can match it. So you use the same plate, same technique, and all of that, and you can match this to the actual cooler. So you can lap the cooler. I lap all my coolers, especially water blocks and that. If you can lap them as flat as possible to match how flat this is now, so much better, so much better. The Corsair X5, or I think something like that, the block, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure it's an X5 or something. It's not an expensive block, but it's not a bad one. It's really good, actually. I had to lap it, but I barely had to lap it. That's amazing to me. Like, barely having to lap something to make it flat from factory is insanely good. So that's good now. As you can see, we got no more grease. Very reflective, though. Very reflective. But you can also see, like, it's not perfect, right? Hopefully, yeah, there you go. Yeah, you can see there's very faint lines in it. That's fine. That's what you want. You're trying to have some thermal paste there because there are micro gaps in that it will fill up, but you don't want it so it's mostly thermal paste. So it's not too bad. That's not bad at all there. Pretty good, pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to set up for the 5.2 gigahertz. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it right now, but I might. So right now I'm just putting back on the blam, the back plate. Set that aside. And what we can do here is set all this back up. Hopefully you guys can see just fine. This here, I just make it so I can move around the CPU, the actual CPU, without damaging the SMDs on the wood. So what I'll do, I think I'll set up the water block and all that now. Put this down here for you so that way you can see how I set it up. Most times you can just use a motherboard for this. I'm using this now because it's a smaller base and I can put stuff in front and around me a lot easier than having a big motherboard. But the motherboard boxes work really good for the height wise because you need it for when you put a GPU in because it's going to stick down. That's the only real problem with it. I don't have like an actual, what do you want to call it, standoffs and all that for your motherboards. I don't want to spend the money. I mean, you can just use a cardboard box. It's free. It's free. And it works just fine. hopefully I can show. Hopefully I can show the block. See how there's like very little copper in the center of that? That's all I had to do to make sure this was nice and flat. Very good, very nice. Again, this is just a Corsair X5 something. It comes apart so that way you can change blocks and all that easy too, which is kind of nice if you really have to. But that's it for that. Okay, just make sure I got everything in kind of a good location for everything. I can sit there nice. That could be moved forward. Be moved forward. There we go. Move that back. There. Forward. There we go. Like that set up there. So that works good. You do that. Boom, boom. Make sure everything fits nice when you set it up. So this pump here has a fan header so you can control it. But I don't use it. Certain D5 pumps though, for like if you're buying the really, really expensive ones, you have to have a really expensive connector, like commander basically for it, like Corsair's commander. You need one of those to actually make it work. I like this pump because if you want to just full bore all the time, you just plug in the Molex and you leave this out. I find with this motherboard, I'm not sure if it's the motherboard or what, but the fan headers aren't that great. They don't pump out like full voltage or something like that. You can't get full speed. So especially with like one of these high power D5 pumps, it won't go to the full speed, which I want it to be quite quick. And this right here should be a fan. That way I don't have to put that going again. And I need to move this, so we can do this, move that, because I have a certain memory stick that I want to put in, which is a pretty high aluminum finned. It's copper modded, of course. I copper modded basically all my stuff, as you can see there. But what I need to do, and I don't really like putting it in first, but I'll show, is this. The height needs to work so that way I'm not putting pressure on it, more or less. So if I had a extender for the 24 pin, that'd be nicer, but I don't. Now I'll just set up all the power and all that. Not hook up the power, of course, but I'll hook up all the power connectors first. Make sure everything's seated nice. Make sure all these power connectors are good. This one came apart for some reason. There we go. And even though I vacuumed, I got cat hairs on it already. Now, make sure with these connectors, especially if you're using like something that's older. I've been using this power supply basically since it came out, just a 650 watt. But since I'm not going to be putting too much load on, it's It's just a 650 watt, right? So if you can get it to like a 85% load, you're going to be on like the most efficient part of it. I'm not even going to be close to that, so it's not going to be that efficient, but this is the lowest power supply, lowest wattage power supply that I have. All my other ones are 850 and up. So I won't even get close to the most efficient as I can. And I like to be efficient on that kind of stuff. Again, D5 pumps all connected into the Molex, but not into the header, so that way I can have full speed on the pump. Now, I might get some electrical tape. See if we can make it so that doesn't come back down, but it's looking alright there. Put this underneath. I'm just checking. I'm not going to put it on. No thermal paste yet. So I'm just checking to make sure the height's good. This is the kind of... These tubes here are the tubes that I prefer because they're like a thick but thin wall, but they're also very soft. It's a silicone type tube. And you can do really, really crazy bends without them kinking. Less restriction on a D5 pump, the more flow you're going to get. So, and the less length. So, see how it's not all that long? All my tubes are not that long on this. It's to make sure I have lots of power for flow. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm happy with that. Before this test too, before this competition, actually, while I was setting up, I was cleaning out the RAM slots, making sure all these RAM slots are nice and clean in that. Some people have issues with taking the RAM slots in and out, and then they go to do a test and they're not getting the scores that they want. The main thing that you want to do is clean out all these connectors, make sure all these are clean. If you're doing really cold temperatures, add in just a little bit of like Vaseline onto all of these. Like when I say very little, you're not even going to be able to see it. Very little Vaseline, you can put it back in. You'll just be guaranteed the moisture is not going to cause any issues on that. Same thing with your CPU if you want to do that. It's only for extreme temperatures. Today I'm only doing water cooling, so it's not that bad. So what I'm going to do is grab my thermal paste. It is live chat, so if anyone's, just let me know what kind of PCs they got, or if they do any kind of overclocking too, or any questions, let me know. So again, before, if you touch the IHS, make sure you clean it up. Again, your fingers are greasy. It doesn't matter how clean you are, you have grease on you, so clean that up. Same thing with your water block, make sure that you clean it up. I just did it. Since this is lapped in that, so it's almost a matched lap. If it was matched, the this right here would actually be full copper as well, but I didn't even need to make it full copper to make it flat, so that's good enough. Copper to copper is better. Any kind of extra height or anything like that will change your thermals. So since we lapped this quite a bit, oh, the IHS is so cold, it's making the thermal paste really hard to spread. My opinion on if you're doing like extreme kind of stuff, you're going to want to use a bit more of this. So that way you're guaranteeing to make sure you got a little bit of thermal paste in, and it's going to spew out and make sure it's perfect. Again, water cooling, air cooling, we just need to worry about the actual height to the CPU die in that, and that way we can wick away. That's why the D5 pumps could be on high. Okay, so hopefully you can see now it's all grayish white now. That's good. I don't need anything on this because I already know how flat this is to this. The only thing I can see right here is it has a couple little bit of specks of dust. And that's probably because of the power supply. Power supply I haven't taken apart and cleaned in a while, so the inside of the power supply is probably not great, but it's probably not too bad. But that looks really good to me. Do I want it this way? Nope, this way. Yep. Now I'm just starting all these. Oh, how's it going? I use hoses for gasoline as car hoses. They can withstand minus 40 and plus. What kind? That's. Are they are they good and flexible too, though? That's the thing. You need to make sure they're flexible. I know these silicone ones, when they get really cold, they're not as good. But if you have them in the position before you start any cooling on it, they're fine. But if you are. Yeah, it's fine if you have it like this and then cool it down. But if you're cool down, these things right here, if you try to move it at all, they don't move. Yeah, because if you use hoses for the gasoline and that, they're made of a certain kind. So you would be able to use like what I like to use is like car radiator antifreeze. I don't like to use windshield washer because it has a drying agent in it, and any kind of like drying agents can destroy. Okay, cat hairs, go away. Any of the like drying agents, you know what it's windshield washer fluids can have like a sort of a drying agent, even though it's good for like minus 40 or 60 or whatever they say. It can destroy your rings, your O-rings, whatever is in it. Depending on your pipes and that, it can destroy it too. The silicone works just fine for that. Again, it's just like pressed stone 50-50. You gotta mix it for 50 water, 50 pressed stone, and you can use that. Works really, really good, in my opinion. It also has like a type of lubrication in it. So DeFi pumps, even though they have it's all like magnetic and all that, and it doesn't touch anything, there is some wear, as in the water will wear. So if you use tap water, don't use tap water, use bottled water if you can. It will add like a lubrication, so it'll help wear and all that. Also, if you have copper and aluminum, it has like a anti-corrosion, so it will help the corrosion aspect of that. It's not recommended, again, to have aluminum copper in your system. Just do full aluminum or full copper. My preference is using full copper because any of your that was kind of loud. Wasn't tightened there. Had to set it in place. It's fine. This back plate here, it's not my good back plate for these kind of competitions. I use a certain back plate that has a smaller standoff. So right now I can move this around if I wanted. I don't like that. I like to make it so that way this CPU block or whatever you're going to use is fairly tight and you can't really move it around. With this one here, I can only go so far, so just crank it as tight as you can, and it's good. Still has a little bit of wiggle room, which is it's okay. Okay, so that's that. Alright, check this over, make sure everything looks good. Yeah, See, even though I cleaned out the ram slat, we're gonna get a couple cat hairs still. And we'll just throw away on the ram stick, make sure everything's looking good there. This is just a very cheap ram stick that I put into this, so it's a cheap ram stick, but this is the best cheap ram stick that I have, so I copper mod it and put a aluminum heat sink onto it, so that way it just works better. Alright, connected. Rams in. Where's my GT240? Ah, I left it in the server. My bad. Forgot I left the GT240. So this is what I generally use for all my overclocking, extreme overclocking, not like your daily systems and that. I'll use this because it just has HDMI, has VGA and DVI. Just guarantees you have all the connections. Also, it doesn't need any external connection, which is great. Absolutely great. And we'll get out my lovely 7-inch 1080p 60Hz monitor. Actually, I won't even connect it yet. I'll put some power into it. Sorry if you heard that. Hit the mic. Now make sure I got a mouse. My keyboard's right here, which another keyboard's on. And we got a little power for that. And we need power for power supply, which is right there. Set this up. Still off. Make sure it's still off, so that's what I want. Make sure everything looks fairly good for the stream. Make sure all these don't have any kinks. Everything looks good there. Do we set this up so you can see, or do I set up so I can see? I'll do it for both. What you doing, Gabby? Hey, yo. And we need power for monitor. Voila. Now, oh, they're not even gonna spin? Cool. Usually these will spin. Just the way the power works on it can feed a little bit of power through, and these fans might spin. Not gonna harm anything. The power only goes through the headers, like the fan headers, so not a big deal. Now I could set this up for you if you need it, but I'll just probably turn it and show everybody what I'm hitting exactly. This is for the competition, so more or less this stream's for me. This YouTube video also helps for verification for everything for me. So if I do show the actual scores and all that on it, show my setup all here, you can use like your YouTube URL for the competition, and they can see everything matches up with the video, and they can see, oh look, he's setting it up all on video, everything like that. It's even better. So if you do the competition and that, and you want to have another verification or help people know what you did to achieve that, YouTube video. And I found my Noctua fan, what was in another PC case. And always want a fan on the RAM, blowing down. Hopefully I can set this up in a nice way. Maybe. Or if I can make like a little standoff for it. Probably not. I do have a bunch of screwdrivers I can maybe use. Maybe. Does this actually fit through or no? No, it doesn't. Dang. Dang. Really hoping. Because we need to make sure we got some cool in here. The VRMs have a actual fan here that worked just fine for it. Like they'll blow the fan. It's a pretty small high-powered fan. Also another fan in the center here. Make sure everything gets airflow to make sure the temperatures are about this, like, constant, not like it's gonna peak or anything like that. Peaking temperatures or higher temperatures on your VRMs or other components on your motherboard can make it so it spikes voltages into your CPU, makes things unstable basically. So making sure everything stays fairly cool. Not even the right size either. It's not even the right size. I don't think that will fit either. We'll see if this little screwdriver works. No. A smaller one. I don't have one around. My apologies. So I'll just set this up in an okay way. No, I can't set that up. It's fine. That will actually work pretty good by the looks of it. Doesn't look all that fancy, but it works. I got the Noctua, so that way it's hopefully fairly quiet for the mic as well. Gabby, you guys keep showing the stream your butt. Big yawn, eh? The motherboard I have to grab. Yeah, I usually do all this kind of setting up before stream. So you do see that there's a broadcast out for my live stream. It's because I'm just setting it up like this. I don't normally show the Delidded CPU and all that on my streams. I just normally have it like this, and I'll start overclocking from there. Just makes things a lot nicer, I find, for visual for people. Making cat hair go everywhere again. Making cat hair go everywhere. Alright, so for this competition as well, I will not be putting any kind of like Wi-Fi, USB, anything like that into the system. So I'll be saving everything to a flash drive. So I'll save the screenshot to the flash drive. I'll save any URLs to the flash drive. More or less, you're using Benchmate, so you're just gonna save the Benchmate save profile with the CPU-Z tabs open, GPU-Z tabs open. For any test, I like to have all of those open. Even if you're just doing CPU, I'll even have GPU open. That way I can always show that I'm using my GT240 basically in all my tests, unless it's a graphics card test. I still need to put my GT240 in for graphics card testing, but that's fine. And I'll just use a flash drive. You save it all to the flash drive. When you're done overclocking, you can put it onto your main PC and upload it from there. I'll be making a video about uploading all that. A couple of things have changed, so maybe people won't know how it's done now. A couple things have changed. It's fairly simple to take it from your flash drive and upload it though. So we got the system set up. Hopefully you guys like my fancy monitor. My fancy monitor made of cardboard tape, but it does use a remote. I can power it with remote on and off. It's kind of nice, and has a built-in fan and now a dust filter. Later on, probably in the future here, I'll be making all this out of aluminum, and I'll be showing how I did that as well. But the fan's soldered onto the motherboard that's on this here. Just a PCB, I guess you can't even say motherboard. It is a motherboard though, and it's the brains for it. Has everything on it for it. So I put a fan there because these little small monitors, even though it's a 7-inch 1080p, only a 60 hertz, they do get warm. So I took it apart and put a fan on it, so I have this monitor for a long time. It's nice. It works really good for the streams and recording too. And that's the fan. I didn't make the case big enough. I gotta downsize a few things. Alright, so we will turn her on. Wait, where's the on? Right here. Okay, so we got that. Now I'm just gonna use my little tweezers and hot wire the power on. Well, blam. So now we got power. Make sure D5. Oh, yeah, D5 pump is going. Everything looks good. Alright, what we got? If you like, I can change the location of the camera so that way you're not just looking at this. You can look at me, but if you would like, I can also do. Hopefully we can show. There. Kind of shows. Just going into the BIOS here. It's just let me know. Yeah, I know everything changed because I took everything out. Alright, so we go BIOS. Let's go to advanced mode. I have profiles saved, so like OC profiles. I'll just see if I can get the 5 gigahertz, see what kind of temperature I'm at, and we can go from there. So basically that's it there. Boom. Now, I wonder if I can make it so I can see this. Oh. Full screen. There we go. Now I can see everything just fine, like you. Alright. There. Now we can all see the screen. Now, what do I want? I want a OC profile. Which one? This one? Yep. And I want to load from profile 1. Yes. Check. Just make sure. Yeah, right. Oh no, it has power from. It's not USB power or HDMI power. The power goes through a 12-volt power connector. So right here, 12-volt power connector. For some reason, when you add this in through the HDMI, it hits the fan headers. So I don't know why it does that. It's not feeding voltage into anything else but the fan headers, which is odd. Can't find where to start. Look for very cheap monitors and like cheap soldering stations and stuff like that, and start from there. Like, you just want to go as cheap as possible and start from there, and then you can perfect more techniques and stuff like that. Again, this is nothing fancy. I just did it so I can add the fan in and fan filter and make it so it's just on like a remote, just remote. So it has like its infrared, so I can turn it on and off, the volume, everything. I took the speakers out of it because they were not good. I'm going to be adding in these better speakers into it that are the same voltage and amps, so I can hook up to the exact same location that they were hooked into, and it will sound better. But I'll be remaking this in the future to make it look professional, really. Yeah, it's difficult to find spots to start. Okay, we're at the 5 gigahertz. So this is the overclock that I want. This is the overclock that I want. So we can go here. Oh, which one is it? The top one? Save. There. Second one. Yes. There we restart. Now we should be at 5 gigahertz. This is just an easy overclock on it. I do believe the RAM's going to be at 2200 megahertz for it. And the CPU is just at 5 gigahertz. Nothing crazy. Boom. We're back on. Yeah, if you want to start on like overclocking and stuff, I do have videos on. It's called the BOG Episode 1 Budget Overclocking Guide, Episode 1. Oh, what we got? The current BIOS does not fully support the boot device. Oh, no, normally I have Hart here. Hart's usually on my stream, and he'll let me know what I just did. I just I didn't add a boot device, an SSD. And where did I put my boot device? Is it in the server? I did a whole bunch of overclocking one day, and I'm not sure where I put the boot device that I need. Got one here, one there, but those are not the ones that I want. Where did I leave it? I guess it's that time to make a new boot device. Okay, so what you see in there is just because I don't have a SSD in. Boot device. I might have to make a new boot device. This could be a really boring stream. I apologize. So I'll just use a cheap Kingston SSD, 240 gigabyte. Very, very cheap. You can pick these up used for generally about $5. So if you can find them for $5, pick up as many as you can afford, because they're great to have. If you're doing like motherboard overclocking, BCLK, you can mess up NVMEs. More or less NVMEs will get messed up. SSDs not so much, but you might have to reinstall Windows and whatever you're using for overclocking onto it. So if you have multiple of these and you're finding that your boot's not working, just switch over your SSD to a brand new Windows 10 or whatever you have onto it. That way you can have a quicker session. So like, instead of having to redo what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna plug this in, put a Windows 10 on this, download everything that I need, which really sucks. Make sure I don't have it. Yeah. So, a really old one here, Windows 10 Pro, and a newer one, which is a Windows 10 Home. I'll just use the Windows 10 Pro. So what I'm gonna have to do too is completely reset, which is fine. Resetting's just fine. And we have to hit the power again. Because what I have to do here is get back into the BIOS to make sure that I reset from the 5 gigahertz. Yep. And it's just let me know there's no boot device. I already know that. And what I can do is quickly go boom, boom, dance mode. We can go here. Boot tool, see profile, exit. Alright, everything's reset. Because I was only on 2 cores at 5 gigahertz, so might as well set it to so we get the 4-core 8 thread out of it. Make the downloading windows a lot faster too. And I'll just let it make sure everything's good. CPU fan, blah blah blah. Yes, that's just a general. So my profile, so these fan headers. Again, this motherboard was very cheap. I mean, very cheap, like $60 cheap when they sell for like usually $120 to some of them $200. The fan headers don't pump out a whole lot of power on this board for some reason, so it is what it is. It'll always just give me that fan error, even though I do have multiple fans in. So I have these 2 fans in the one CPU fan and the Noctua in another one. It'll always give me that error. So what I'll do is add a Windows key. I wish Hart was on my stream right now. He usually lets me know that I didn't do something, or will let me know beforehand that it looks like I'm not doing something that I should be doing. Because doing the live streaming and that, I can miss an SSD like this. Oh. I'll just set that back up there. In a nice location, hopefully. Come on. Not bad. Make sure it's not hitting nothing. And we need a SATA. Download the Windows, and then you have to download take screenshots in Hades or screenshots in Ada. No. I just take screenshots. Oh, see, oh no, I don't. No, I don't. I just take screenshots of like, yeah, like just a CPU. I'll be showing it here. The CPU Z, GPU Z. I'll make sure it's on like the desktop so you can see it through CPU, motherboard, and memory. And then with GPU Z, just want to see the GPU, all the specs in that. And then I'll have a second GPU Z open, and it'll show the sensors. It really, you don't need to do it. For some tests, you literally just need to open up CPU Z. That's it, and just on CPU tab, not on memory or motherboard. Depends on what test you're doing. I'm doing P for the competition, so I have to have just CPU Z's open. So CPU Z, CPU tab, CPU Z motherboard tab, and CPU Z memory tab. That's all you really need on it. Okay, now I got all that. I can boom. Oh yeah, I need to get my power button out of storage so that way I can just hook it up and have actual button to press. Boom. Looking good. Yes. Oh, I did not need to go to that. So, just a motherboard. Yeah, there's not some keys on it. This keyboard used to be for my gaming keyboard. So some keys I took out because if you hit certain keys while gaming, it'll make you do something you don't want to do. This is the Windows key on the keyboard. Completely got rid of it, of course, because if you hit that, you're literally looking at your desktop when you should be in game. So I took that out. But this motherboard or this keyboard works on all of my motherboards, which some keyboards won't work on some motherboards. It's very odd. Oh, sorry, this keyboard won't work on my LGA 1366 Intel board for some reason. So I have to use a different keyboard. But that's it. And then we'll just make sure we are here. Blah blah blah. I think that's the right one. Just to reset. If it does it again to where it's showing me the CPU fan, I have to go into the BIOS and set the, yeah. I'll have to set so monitoring the CPU fan header, I'll have to turn that off. It's the only problem on this board that I find, but if you're trying to save money and that, you just work around it. I need advanced mode. I need to go to monitor. I need to make sure it's the CPU I'm doing. So CPU fan. Ignore. And ignore. So you just gotta set it so that way when you turn it on, it ignores the fan headers. And it'll make the fans go full bore. That's the only thing. It'll make the fans go full bore. After 2 weeks, you dug out Windows. Whoops. There we go. Now we can go back to here. Make sure we're saving that. Save changes and reset. Now we won't have that issue. There we go. Now we can set this all up. That should be 64. Kind of a boring stream, so maybe I'll make it so that you guys can see me. I don't know. It's up to you. It's kind of nice looking at the fans spinning. I need to make a Rufus key, so you can make different kind of Windows keys with Rufus, and you just put and you make Rufus is like a USB bootable device that you can put on a USB. So like Windows 7, Windows Vista, Windows XP, whatever you want to use. You make a Rufus key. I gotta do that so that way I can download Windows 7. It'll help me a little bit on one of the benchmarks I want to do. But the scores I'm getting right now are just fine. They're really good. I'm just trying to get that 5.2 gigahertz on 2 cores on the CPU. The RAM timings are really good. Let's make sure. In, Alt I. I just use the keyboard to go through all the processes. I don't use the mouse. I don't have one. Alt I. Windows 10 Pro. And custom. Format, Alt F. Format everything up. And then we can do in. And we're good to go. We're downloading Windows. Alright, so there we go. Whoops. I knocked out the HDMI. That doesn't look good on the stream, but you can see it's just downloading Windows right now, so got a little bit of time to waste here. If any questions, just let me know. It could be about what I'm doing or what I'm not doing right now. I do other things besides this. I do a lot of RAM overclocking, DDR3 and DDR5 more or less. DDR4 I have done, but only Samsung B die. So like your best kits of RAM, I've only done Samsung B die. This is not good kit of RAM for DDR3, by the way. This is not. This is literally like a cheap kit. So $20 for 4 sticks. That's really good. $5 per stick. Very good. And then I just copper modded and put heatsink on my best one, so that way I can overclock it as far as I can. Because I'm going to be putting close to 2 volts into this RAM, which is quite a bit. DDR3 though, so like your Dominator GTs or your ADATAs, which make really good kits as well, they use about 1.9 volts. Well, they can hit 1.9 volts. The lower voltage for all the timings and high frequency, the better. So your Dominator GTs are going to be better, but more or less, it's all about how you tune it and that. And having just making sure it stays cool, just better. But you're like, some DDR3s, they come stock XMP of like 1.75 volts, which is crazy. Heart! Oh, my bad, man. Yeah, okay. I was just talking about you, actually, man. Evo Lagera DDR3? I'm not sure. Yeah, I heard I was just talking about you, man. Yeah, I forgot to put an SSD in. And right now I'm just downloading Windows 10 on an SSD, so kind of a boring part right now, but yeah. I was like, man, why is it not working? Oh, I didn't put an SSD in. Yeah, I'm going to try to get that 5.2 gigahertz. I just went over the delidded processing of the CPU for like the CPU just delidded the lapped IHS on both sides, and then the lapped die, so the CPU die is also lapped. I just re-thermal paste everything, made sure everything looked good. So I'm hoping to hit 5.2. They do, man. They just love it. The RAM, if I can get the RAM a little bit higher, if I can get 2400 megahertz out of it, I'll be really happy. 2200 is the best so far I've gotten out of it. Oh, I don't have Wi-Fi. Where did I put it?